Can't you just act like family for once? Mom stands by the dining table with her hands on her hips. She's wearing an old sweater with frayed cuffs. Her voice is loud like she's scolding a child. On the wooden table sits a half-cooked turkey. Grease drips down its surface into a silver tray. Dad leans against the kitchen doorway with his arms crossed and a cold stare. My sister sits on the couch scrolling through her phone. The blue glow from the screen lights up her face. When she looks up, there's a sneer on her lips. The tip of her foot steps on the freshly mopped floor. A wet footprint is left behind. The air smells like oil and cold wind. I stand at the door holding a bottle of red wine I just bought. Outside it's dark and the wind pushes the door softly. I say dinner is already ordered from a restaurant. Mom's face darkens immediately. She says don't pretend to be generous here. Dad lets out a cold laugh and says you think you're something special. My sister rolls her eyes and says you don't even make enough to buy me a bag. Her voice is sharp like a blade. I step inside and place the wine on the corner of the table. Mom pushes the bottle away. She says we don't need your fake kindness. Dad lights a cigarette and the smoke fills the kitchen. I don't sit down, I lean against the wall. My sister's grin grows even bolder. She says everyone knows you're not doing great. She flips her long hair hard. Her earrings make a crisp sound as they hit her cheek. My hands tighten inside my sleeves. Dad taps the ash and says let's eat, don't let her ruin the mood. Mom turns to get plates. My sister keeps staring at her phone like none of this matters. I quietly watch everything. It's a scene I know too well. It started when I was a child. I've always been the one left out. My sister is their pride, their little princess. I'm the one who doesn't belong at the table. I remember when I was 8, my sister got a fever. Mom carried her into the ER. Dad ran a red light on the way. I stood at the door blocked by a nurse. My cold was treated like a threat. They sent me to my aunt's house that night. Not one word of comfort. They said my sister needed clean air. They said I needed to be mature. I was so mature I didn't even dare cry. I sat in my aunt's living room with a torn picture book. The yellow wall lamp cast light on my face. I bit my lip and held the tears back. That was the day I understood I didn't have a place in this family. When she grew a little older, she had her own room. I slept in the small space under the stairs. When she got sick, everyone rushed around her. When I got sick, I got painkillers tossed my way. When she got AC+, they popped champagne. When I got straight A's, they didn't look up. They said girls don't need to work that hard. They said my sister was already under enough pressure. They said I should be considerate. Every day I woke up at 6. I cooked breakfast for myself. I walked to school on icy roads. I stayed in the library solving problems until late at night. No one ever cooked dinner for me. No one ever drove me to class. I got a scholarship. I got accepted to college. My parents barely reacted. They said, "Good, now you can move out early." My sister clapped her hands. She said, "Great, now I finally get the big room." I dragged my suitcase out the door. No one came to see me off. Only wind blew through dry maple leaves. I turned to look at them. They never raised their heads. My first winter in college, I worked 3 jobs. Classes in the day, library at night, cleaning coffee shop tables after midnight. My hands were covered in coffee stains and paper cuts. I rented a tiny basement. The heater was old and cold air leaked through the walls. I sat on the floor with my laptop. I wrote reports and chewed on discounted bread. I didn't complain. I knew I couldn't fall. I interned at an auction house. I touched the kind of jewelry I had only seen in magazines as a kid. Each stone was cut perfectly. They were more real than warmth. They taught me value isn't given by others. With my eyes and precision, I found a brooch they thought was fake. The spotlight hit my face in the auction hall. Everyone turned to look at me. My boss shook my hand and said, "Nice work." I knew my life had shifted. After graduation, I stayed at the auction house. I got my first big project, an old money family's heirloom jewels. I found the missing centerpiece stone. I earned my first real fortune. I didn't tell anyone. I took a loan and rented an office. I started my own appraisal company. By day, I wore tailored suits to meet clients. At night, I ate instant noodles while doing the books. I signed more contracts. I opened branches. In 5 years, I had more wealth than they could imagine. But to my family, I was still the invisible sister. Every week, I came home for dinner. They told me to wipe the table. They told me to carry my sister's bags. They never asked about my life. They said it's just a small business. They said my sister had real potential. That Thanksgiving, Mom got sick. I offered to book a high-end catering service. They laughed at me. They said, "No way you have that kind of money." I didn't explain. I just signed the bill. That night I was upstairs handling a deal in Hong Kong. It was worth millions. My sister burst into the room without knocking. She saw the numbers dancing on the screen. Her look changed instantly. It wasn't disdain anymore. It was greed. She ran downstairs and shouted for everyone to look. She said I'd been lying to them. She said I was rich. My parents stared at me. Their faces looked like they'd caught a child lying. Mom said if you have money you should help your sister. Dad said she needs it more. My sister said you owe this family. She stood tall in front of the sofa. Just like the day she took my room. I said nothing. I took out the loan contract she'd signed. The one from when she borrowed money to buy luxury goods. I turned on the projector and showed everyone. She said it didn't count. She said family doesn't need contracts. I said the law doesn't agree. Dad's face went stiff. Mom froze. My sister lunged to grab the papers. I stepped back. She fell on the carpet. I said coldly, "The lawyer's letter will be at your door tomorrow." Her face turned pale. She said, "You can't do this." Her voice shook. Her hands slipped on the floor. Dad called me heartless. Mom cried and said, "How can you be so cruel to family?" I said, "This is the kind of family you raised." She grabbed my arm and begged. She said, "Please, I don't want to go to court." Her tears fell on my hand. Cold and wet. I pushed her hand away. I walked to the door and put on my coat. The wind outside was freezing. But my head had never been clearer. She called my name behind me. Her voice was like a cat with its claws pulled out. Dad smashed a glass in anger. Mom leaned on the wall crying. I stepped down the stairs. The snow crunched beneath my boots. I was no longer the one they ignored. I stood above them now. I didn't look back. The lawyer's letter arrived the next day. My sister called 10 times. I didn't answer. My parents sent relatives to talk me down. I said, "I'm just taking what's mine." I looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't that 8-year-old locked out of the hospital room anymore. I was a blade. They sharpened this blade themselves. Now it was cutting back. My sister signed the agreement in court. Her voice trembled. She couldn't look at me. I turned and walked away. Sunlight came through the glass. I didn't smile. But I felt alive again.